Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Eugene Gregan, and you're in my humble abode here, my studio up in the Catskill Mountains. And we're about to start a painting, so I'm just sort of warming up here, the drawing, which I always do. It was a Delacroix who said drawing was his prayer. Anyhow, we're going to make a little film of the painting of the beautiful Siberian irises that Beverly just picked. And the hillside is covered with them, along with this magnificent Akusa dogwood, which they also call, it's a sacred Chinese dogwood, you know. And, so we're here in paradise. Now, the other side of the house is a full garden full of fantastic flowers and vegetables, which end up in the gourmet kitchen, you know, constantly stimulated by what's growing. And so when I'm in the garden, if I'm weeding, inevitably my peripheral vision will pick up the painting of the day. Either a color combination I've never seen before, or, you know, and I work with it, I trust it. You know, I used to have written on my studio wall, trust every stroke. But it's, you know, it's a thing I learned from studying Chinese painting, brush painting, you know, their secret being spontaneity, you know, and also painting from the heart, not the head. You know, so you practice, they used to like Tixay irises, and they would paint the shadow. They would set it up so that it was just a profile, it was a silhouette. And then you see it. It's just like I was talking to someone recently about what you learn in art school, or that's where I learned it, was to walk the edge of the shape of what you're drawing. It teaches you to not only see abstract, but it teaches you that thing of being able to change your scale. Because painters, like musicians who live with the visual world all the time, see a little differently.
So is that process of walking the edge, is that like a visualizing process?
Because what you do is you make that into a symbol. And then what I've learned is make that into calligraphy. I mean, you could go graphic, you know, make it very, you know, sharp and use the motif like Frank Lloyd Wright was still or whatever. But my thing is to reduce, see, I was really turned on by the Mustard Seed Garden Manual, the Chinese book, where they took everything in nature and reduced it to the minimum brushstrokes. From birds to flowers to mountains to rocks to people. And that's a great way to actually paint from nature, because you can't paint all the flowers, all the trees, all the leaves, you know. You have to select from there something to make, it's about the paint. You know, the Chinese have this thing, the top is heaven, the bottom is earth, and there's the void. So you're going into the void, and you can go into that with a one-haired brush, or, you know, whatever. So that's your space to work with. But that's what's important, and how you select. But what you do is you practice the piece from nature that you love, and then it's yours. You know, you reduce it to calligraphy. So you have this kind of instant spontaneity, so the painting always lives. You know, it always looks like it's just done.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the hospital, it was funny because when I was in the hospital, in my more flamboyant years, I lent people money or helped them out, and they were feeling guilty or whatever, so I was showing up with cash. So I come out of the hospital with a cigar box full of money, and went down to Chinatown to score some silk. And I go down to Chinatown, and as a lot, you know, when you go down a path, the teacher's kind of fallen away, or the right book at the right time. The guy turns out to be, he's Chinese American. He taught at Princeton, he taught at Berkeley. He and his wife at this old bookstore on Pell Street. And we get an instant romance going because I'm interested, you know. So he turned me on to Chinese colors, inks, inkstones, or I ground ink. And at that time, I was very interested in Eastern teaching. It was funny because the Allen Ginsbergs and the Kerouacs and Ferlinghetti and all those guys, that's where they were getting their stuff from. Hermann Hesse, you know, the beat game, you know, Ram Dass, you know, they got into this whole kind of East meets West, and then because a lot of them ended up in India. You know. I was more interested in the Chinese because I loved their paintings more than anybody else's, you know. There was something there, totally magic, you know. And it's funny because every time I would try to find out more about a painter, I'd see a painting I like and draw an ink drawing, it would always anonymous. Anonymous. You know, these guys didn't even sign their work, you know. But anyhow, he turned me on to all the Chinese art supplies and the mustard seed garden, which is their like encyclopedia of nature. And I was off to the races, you know. And then I decided to go to Europe, and it was perfect because I could fit everything in that attaché case. My watercolors, my inks, you know, watercolor blocks. So wherever I went, I would set up. And that's another thing I always tell students. I don't care, even young kids, get a table in the corner of your room that's yours, your puja table, you know? Leave the stuff out of sight, out of mind, you know? And go to it. Ritual, very important. Like in the Chinese ritual, every day you go out and get water. Guys used to go out and get their water from the petals off of flowers. It's the only water they wanted to grind their ink with. Pour that on the inkstone, and you grind the ink into sticks of ink, and you make, you know, and it's the sound, the smell, like in those inks, incense and jade, and as you're grinding it, you hypnotize yourself. The sound, the whole thing, and you're there. You're getting rid of all those guys who are advertising for your attention. You know, I should be doing this. No. You are the ink. Then you're off to the races. You start and get a stack of paper, and then you warm up, and then it'll take you somewhere. You know, and it's a fabulous ritual. And of course, as I started to anchor myself more when I got to living up in the country, I started painting bigger and bigger, getting bigger and bigger brushes. You know, doing larger and larger motifs. You know.
So that's the confidence that comes with a life that's somehow rooted in a real place on the earth.
Oh, yeah, because Taoism really. See, the Chinese didn't get into religion, so to speak. They were into philosophies, from Confucius to Taoism. And even when Buddha came, he came at the right time because he was like the psychiatrist who showed up. You know, this is how your brain's working, guys. And it was the perfect match. You know, they went nuts. Homage to that teaching. You know, the whole story of the Bodhidharma, who brought Buddhism from India to China. And at one point got very disappointed in trying to teach, so he sat in front of this wall for 9 years. The myth says that he took off his eyelids because blinking was bringing him down. And there was a young guy who wanted to study with him. Kept coming back, pestering him. Go away. So the guy shows up one day and cuts his arm off and gives it to him. There's a whole series of famous drawings of this event. And, so it's how important a teacher is.
Some people trying to find their way back to the land.
Yeah, it's all about time. You see, this concept of time as money is a lie. You can't buy time. And what happens when you live like this, you become very rich in time. And because you have the time in a day, like most people I talk to, I say, how many hours a day do you have for yourself? And they look at me like I'm out of my mind. I mean, they're booked and scheduled into the next 6 months to a year or whatever, or forever. You know, and you can't create without time because you have to have discipline to have grace. This takes time. And it's time spent, really doing, But my thing is, even when I'm gardening, I get ideas for painting or carving or whatever, It all becomes one. It's all, grist for the mill. But if you don't have the time to actually sit down and do it, day after day, week after week, because what happens is you start to see your own personal growth. And that's what turns you on. All of a sudden you're making drawings and paintings that you're really satisfied with, and each one will turn you on to the next 10 or whatever, But it's all about time. And now the way things are, people are oblivious to that.